technology, it's up 100%. Issues like counter-narcotics, our operations are up by 70%. With regard to counterterrorism, those are classified numbers that we'll get into in the classified portion, but those are triple digits. We've accomplished more on the counterterrorism front in the past year than in the prior 4 years combined. Again, really a credit to the CIA workforce. Morale at the agency is high because people are doing the work that they signed up to do, and this administration is calling on them to do more. I would say they are tired but happy.
If I can steal back the final 45 seconds, I have one question for Director Patel. Director Patel, the current shutdown that is caused by us not funding TSA, Border Control, DHS, and all those things, how hard has that made the job of counterintelligence, FBI, to protect us here in the homeland from threats that came through our borders or internally and already existing in the United States, Director Patel?
Thank you for the question. When it comes specifically to the combination efforts between the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, we have 59 Homeland Security task forces that we have stood up in every single state, and then some, that are co-led by the FBI and HSI. And obviously having a stopgap in funding is hurting those abilities to go out there and fight crime and pick up violent offenders across the country. Even though the DHS workforce shows up every day, I think they've gone 1 month without a paycheck now. We also have things like our Southern Border Intelligence Center in Tucson, Arizona, that is our hub for intelligence collection operations on foreign terrorist organizations, specifically the narco traffickers down in Mexico.
Thank you. My time's expired.
Mr. Carson's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. The Trump administration has justified this war with Iran as necessary to stop an imminent threat, but the administration has not provided this committee with any intelligence indicating Iran was preparing a nuclear weapon, planning a preemptive attack on the United States, or possess any immediate capability to strike the U.S. homeland. That raises very serious questions about what the analysis of the IC provided before the decision to go to war was made. Directors Gabbard and Ratcliffe, is there any evidence that Iran intended to conduct a preemptive attack on the United States? And I ask this because 13 service members have been killed in Trump's war, including Captain Seth Koval, a husband and a dad from my state of Indiana, and my constituents want answers. So is there any evidence that Iran intended to conduct a preemptive attack on the U.S. prior to beginning this war, yes or no?
Congressman, the answer to this question needs to be reserved for a closed hearing. I will say, however, the intelligence community does provide the assessments of the threats that exist to the president so that he can make that determination within the body of information and intelligence and activities within the region that ultimately he is responsible for. What is an imminent threat, and if there is an imminent threat, what actions need to be taken?
Congressman, as the DNI said, there's a body of intelligence that we'll be able to cover in the classified portion of this hearing that reflects, that does reflect that in the likely event of a conflict between Iran and Israel, that the U.S. would be immediately attacked, regardless of whether the United States stayed out of that conflict.
Shifting gears to Ranking Member Himes' point, let me read to you from the 2025 Annual Threat Assessment under your watch last year. Quote, Moscow's malign influence activities will continue for the foreseeable future and will almost certainly increase in sophistication and volume. Moscow probably believes information operations efforts to influence U.S. elections are advantageous, regardless of whether they affect election outcomes. By contrast, this year's threat assessment makes no mention of foreign threats to elections. Meanwhile, the IC has been publicly warning about foreign powers interfering in our elections for nearly a decade. So the omission is very striking. And to that point, sitting here today, I'm not aware of any intelligence products in the past year dedicated to foreign plans and intentions toward current and future U.S. elections. Director Gabbard, yes or no, ma'am, have you directed or been directed to stop or limit dissemination of intelligence reports or finish intelligence reporting concerning foreign plans and intentions about upcoming U.S. elections or foreign threats to the midterms?
No.
Director Patel, same question for the FBI, sir. Yes or no, sir?
No, sir.
Director Ratcliffe, same question for the CIA, sir. Yes or no?
No.
General Hartman, same question for NSA, yes or no, sir?
No, sir.
General Adams, same question for the DIA, yes or no, sir?
No, sir.
I yield back, Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Ms. Stefanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, when you began your testimony, you stated that your remarks do not represent your personal beliefs. That's the first time I've heard that at a committee hearing. Why did you say that? Or is there anything in the threat assessment that you personally disagree with?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The reason I've said that is twofold. Number one is when I assumed this role as Director of National Intelligence through the confirmation process and beyond, many members of Congress rightly said your personal views and your politics in this role get checked at the door. And as Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility is to report the intelligence community's assessments objectively and to make sure that they are not politicized in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, there are those who, for one reason or another, have tried to mischaracterize the intelligence community's assessments and saying, well, this is just a political view, or trying to misdirect from what the intelligence community is reporting. So I took the opportunity to state that from the outset, that this is the intelligence community's assessments.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask this because this week there was a high-profile resignation of Director of National Counterterrorism Center. Now, I want to be clear from the outset. I've communicated directly with President Trump my support for Operation Epic Fury, and I was very not only disappointed, but how inappropriate this letter was. And I want to read a statement that and get your personal assessment, whether you agree or disagree with that. And that's this. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States and that you should strike now. There was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into a disastrous Iraq war. Now, I cannot say how much I disagree with that statement. Do you agree or disagree with what this letter was put out by former Director Kent?
He said a lot of things in that letter. Ultimately, we have provided the president with the intelligence assessments, and the president is elected by the American people and makes his own decisions based on the information that's available to him.
But do you agree with, does that statement he made, blaming Israel, concern you?
Yes.
My next question is, I want to touch on the rise of terrorist attacks on the homeland. In the month of March alone, there were multiple high-profile Islamic terrorist attacks. You had Temple Israel Synagogue in Michigan. You had in Texas, you had an ISIS-inspired attack where they threw an IED in New York City. What is your assessment as to the rise of Islamic terrorism on the homeland?
As you've pointed to, Congresswoman, this continues to be an extreme concern, not only because of the rise of these attacks, but the mechanisms which they're carried out and the challenges that the intelligence community has in being able to try to detect some of these threats and attacks in advance. I'd like to defer to the FBI director on some of this because they have been very successful in many cases over the last year in detecting them and preventing these attacks. But due to the nature of the challenge in many of these attackers not having contact with known foreign terrorist entities or individuals makes this a much more challenging threat to deal with.
And I want to turn to Director Patel. I think that's a good, important segue to get your assessment. And I also want to add another aspect of the question. We're working on a 9/11 Commission review, 25-year review. What other tools do you need to make sure that we are able to have the most robust, effective CT efforts?
Yeah, thank you, Congresswoman. Just real quick, so last year we had 2,300 arrests related to foreign terrorist organizations. We had 700 counterterrorism arrests, and the FBI had 640 counterterrorism disruptions where we stopped attacks on the homeland. Specifically in December, we stopped 4 in an 18-day span. What I need is specifically highlighted in the Norfolk attack. In Norfolk, an individual who was convicted of terrorism and sentenced based upon that conviction should have still been in prison. The Department of Justice in the first Trump administration sought a sentence of 240 months. The judge in that case downward departed and gave a variance to nearly half that sentence. If that had not occurred, that individual would still be in prison and a member of our uniformed military service would still be alive. I want to work with the legislature to figure out how to increase the sentencing for convicted terrorists and also work on the denaturalization process for someone who should not be in this country who wants to attack and kill American citizens and American service members.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentlewoman yields. Mr. Castro.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for your testimony today. I want to start with a question about Iran and discuss first how the war began. Secretary Rubio told us that Israel was going to strike Iran regardless, and that doing so would have triggered Iranian retaliation against U.S. forces already in the region. And Director Ratliff, you seemed to affirm that in comments just a few moments ago. So rather than tell Israel to stand down, the president joined the war. The Congress and the American people still don't know what the president's actual goals are. And yet, we have lost 13 U.S. service members. But here's what we do know. The president has said that he wants a deal. He said Iran wants to make a deal and that he's not ready because, quote, the terms aren't good enough yet. Yet, they just killed Ali Larijani, the de facto leader of Iran, who, while not a friend of the United States, would have been the person to negotiate any agreement with. The president explicitly said that the United States did not strike Iran's energy infrastructure because, in his words, having to rebuild it, quote, would take years. Yet this morning, Israel struck the South Pars gas field, the world's largest natural gas reserve, triggering Iranian attacks on Qatari gas facilities. Oil prices are up 15% in the last 24 hours. In San Antonio, my hometown, where I represent, the cost of gas has gone up nearly 40% in 3 weeks. Last night, the president said that the United States knew nothing about the attack and called on Israel to stop similar attacks on energy. Israel denies this and says that the attack was cleared by the United States. So my question is, what does the intelligence community assess Israel's goals in this war to be? And are those goals aligned with the goals of the United States?
I'm thinking carefully here about closed setting.
Are the goals aligned?
The objectives that have been laid out by the president are different from the objectives that have been laid out by the Israeli government.
And how do they differ?
We can see through the operations that the Israeli government has been focused on disabling the Iranian leadership and taking out several members, obviously beginning with the Ayatollah and the supreme leader. And they continue to focus on that effort.
And how does that differ from our goals?
The president has stated that his objectives are to destroy Iran's ballistic missile launching capability, their ballistic missile production capability, and their Navy, the IRGC Navy, and mine-laying capability.
So the death and destruction continues. The economic cost to the United States, to Israel, to the Gulf states, and to the world continues to increase. So I want to ask you, to the best of your knowledge, do you know whether Israel is supportive of the president's call to make a deal with Iran?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know Israel's position on that.
And to what do you attribute Israel's decision to strike Iranian energy infrastructure, despite President Trump's call to keep those facilities off limits?
I don't have an answer for that.
So they ignored the president. Do you agree with that?
I'm not privy to any of their deliberations or what went into their calculus in launching this or other attacks. We are not involved with in the operational element of this. We're providing continuously on a daily basis the intelligence assessments of the events that are occurring. And
I guess I know the
effects of them.
FBI can't because they're domestic, but can anybody else at the table provide any insight into that?
I guess I'm not sure what the question you're asking, Congressman Castro. I guess a couple of things. the goals that the president set out are clearly defined. The DNI related those. What was not included is a goal of the U.S.
Well, Director, let me start with this. Let me start with this question. You asked what my question is. Let me reclaim my time, Director. Come on. Do you know why Israel decided to strike that infrastructure despite the fact that the president said it should be off limits?
I wouldn't speak for Israel.
What do you guys know? We're at war. What do you guys know?
We'll have to take that for the record.
Yes, let's take it for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to welcome the panelists here today. Today is March 19th. On April 19th, FISA goes dark. 702 goes dark. And it's been talked about many times, but up to 60% of the president's daily briefing is derived from FISA 702. And we look at the successes that we've had in protecting the homeland and also the conflicts the U.S. has been involved with, the flawless operation in Venezuela, Operation Fury in Iran, troop protection, the successes we've had on the battlefield in Ukraine, the recovery and release of the Hamas hostages in the tunnels in Israel, all derived from FISA 702. There is not a military operation that we've been involved with where FISA 702 was not, as Director Ratcliffe has said, been indispensable to the United States in the protection of our country. Director Patel has also said FISA 702 is indispensable. We're 30 days away from it going dark. Director Ratcliffe, can you clarify the President's position on an 18-month clean reauthorization and how that's going to proceed moving forward?
Congressman, thank you, and thank you for highlighting this issue. So the President is in favor of an 18-month clean reauthorization of FISA 702, and I would add to that, I'm heartened by the fact to hear that the chairman of this committee and the ranking member are in agreement with that. And I know there's bipartisan support for that, and there should be. And I know this is an important vote for you to take, but I would ask that you all consider when you do that, when you look at the fact that former DNIs and former CIA directors and former FBI directors and DIA directors and NSA directors across Republican and Democrat administrations are in support of FISA 702 in its current form. These are the people that are making the decisions to keep Americans safe. And so I wish the reauthorization was longer than 18 months, Congressman. I think that this is something that I wish you all would consider for longer than that, so that regardless of who the president is in the future, he or she would have the benefit of, as you said, a tool that's indispensable across administrations, provides more than half of the important actionable intelligence that the President and the Commander-in-Chief relies upon.
Thank you for that. Director Gabbard, you're supportive of the 18-month extension the President's seeking without a warrant requirement?
That is the President's position, and that is the position of the intelligence community.
And you will be supporting that, correct?
I will support the President's decision to execute this.
Correct. Thank you. Director Gabbard, we implemented 2 years ago a number of reforms, actually 56 of them, that were part of the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act. Collection of what we thought were problems with FISA 702, going back during the first Trump administration and even before that. That you have helped implement. I was wondering if you could talk specifically about those reforms on the cutting down of FBI agents having great activity as it relates to FISA. Please tell us some of the. Director Patel.
Sorry, I thought you were. Since I became director 13 months ago, we approved the query request of U.S. persons. We also require. Also, we have we used to, before this, our system to say it automatically searches 702. You now have to actually intentionally doing so. On top of that, we've reduced the number of personnel at the FBI from 6,600 before I got there to 3,500. And we've also gone above and beyond what RISA requires in terms of misuse it unintentionally, like you typed a name wrong in terms of use it, you're immediately terminated your access forever.
Thank you.
Mr. Crow.
Your job and the job of your agency and department to assess the views of Iranian leadership, their policy beliefs and policy positions, correct?
Yes.
That includes now deceased Ali Khamenei of Iran, correct?
Yes.
And the now leader, his son Mujtaba Khamenei, correct?
Yes.
The son is considered more of a hardliner than his father. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So hardline that even some of Iran's leaders thought he was too aggressive. Isn't that correct?
That is the intelligence community assessment, yes.
Mujtaba, the son, is particularly close to the
That is the intelligence community assessment.
He was involved in ordering violent crackdowns on Iranian protesters, including their murder, correct?
Yes.
And we don't know if the son will continue his father's religious ban on developing nuclear weapons. Is that correct?
It is unknown at this time.
You testified before this committee last year that the elder, now deceased Khamenei, had in 2003 banned the nuclear weapons program, or suspended it, correct?
There was a fatwa in place that stated that.
And that fatwa remained in place last year when you testified before this committee, correct?
Yes.
And that fatwa remained in place recently, correct?
As far as I know, it has not been lifted.
Yeah, you're aware of no information that would lift that fatwa.
I'm not aware of any intelligence reporting that states that. To be clear on the Mojtaba, the son who has been named to replace him, it is unclear of his status or his involvement. He was injured very severely through one of the Israeli strikes. And so the decision-making is unclear about what's happening in the Iranian leadership.
So it's unclear. So we're less certain of the positions of Iranian leadership and their intentions than we were 60 days ago, correct?
That's an accurate assessment.
Okay. One of your jobs is to create products assessing Iran and the threats it poses to the United States, correct?
Yes.
And that includes potential outcomes for military action, correct?
It includes potential outcomes of a variety of scenarios.
In the likelihood of those outcomes.
Yes.
Generally, when you make assessments about threats facing the United States, you will look at, in Iran, in any instance, the likely scenarios that have come out of military action, correct?
The intelligence community takes all of those factors into account when they create these assessments.
When you look at the threats posed by foreign countries, you also assess timelines to those threats, correct?
What do you mean by timelines?
Like a breakout time, for example, for nuclear weapons or the development of ballistic missiles.
Yes, based on the information available at any given time.
In the timeline also for potential terrorist attacks, correct?
Broadly, yes,
It
assesses
is
all
common
matters
practice
available
for the
that-
IC
that.
to assess the timeline of all threats. Nuclear weapons development, ballistic, right?
Yes.
Ballistic weapons development,
Based on the information available, yes.
terrorist attacks,
Same applies.
cyber attacks, timelines for all of those, correct?
When there is information available that point to that, yes.
In likelihood, as well as the timeline, correct?
Based on the information available.
Timing is important, is it not?
It is an important factor that goes into the assessment.
So it is your position sitting here today that you made no timeline determination as to threats that Iran had facing the United States, correct?
It's a very broad statement, but where the information is available, the intelligence community factors that into their assessment products.
Did you or the IC make any assessments as to the timing of potential threats from Iran in the last 90 days?
I'm sure there was timeline assessments that were delivered.
Did any of them show imminence?
The imminent nature of a threat is determined by the president based on a totality of information provided to him.
Did any of them show that there were attacks anticipated within the next 90 days from Iran?
It's too simplistic of a statement to say that because it depends on various scenarios occurring or not occurring.
Did those assessments show timelines for the threats that are?
The totality of threats, yes, there were timelines involved where it applied and where that information was available. But again, to your question about the determination of imminence, the president makes that determination based on the totality of information and intelligence.
The bottom line is there was no imminent threat, and you know that, and there's no product that shows that. I yield back.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I want to expand on the questioning from my colleague, Mr. LaHood, regarding FISA 702. Obviously, it is the imminent issue right before us. Unequivocally, the most critical national security tool our nation has to keep us safe from fentanyl, from foreign wars, and everything in between. Mainly to Director Rack, but any of you can. Most perplexing debates that I've been subject to in my time here is this debate over what warrants are and when they're needed. In the 250-year history of this country, and going back to the very origins of law enforcement, we have always had a warrant requirement, on the collection of evidence. We have never had a warrant requirement on the querying of already lawfully collected data, which is why we don't require police officers to get warrants when they run license plates, querying off of already lawfully collected DOT data. It's why we don't require police officers to get a warrant to enter the evidence locker in their police precincts, which contains already lawfully collected data. It would literally shut down the system. And that's not a warrant requirement. That's a secondary warrant requirement. That's a warrant requirement on steroids. So, Director Ratcliffe, or any of you, I know you've been subject to these questions as well. Is it just a confusion over the difference between the collection of evidence versus the querying of our already lawfully collected data? Is it a lack of understanding of what incidental collection is, which is a fundamental precept of law enforcement? But if we have a warrant requirement on steroids for now the querying of already lawfully collected data, just by the numbers, that would require an expansion of the federal judiciary by a factor of 100. It would literally shut down our law enforcement apparatus at perhaps the most dangerous time in our nation's history. So, Director Ratcliffe, or any of you, if you could just walk me through your analysis there.
Well, I'll start, Congressman. Thanks for the question. Again, thanks for highlighting this important issue. And as has been pointed out, reforms should be implemented where they're necessary. And I think, speaking for myself, and I know Director Patel supported the reforms from 2 years ago to make improvements, and they did. And so some reforms should be considered. A warrant is, and with respect to the reforms that have been implemented, we're talking about, when we talk about Fourth Amendment rights and privacy, we're at a 99.9% compliance rate with respect to that. So I would start by saying, why are you trying to fix what's not broken with something that I can tell you from this seat, the fix would not work. And I go back to my comment before, CIA directors, FBI directors, the people that have been in all of these chairs before on a bipartisan basis agree that a warrant won't work and don't advocate for it. Again, Congressman, you're correct. This is lawfully collected information, and these things come at you very fast, and you have to make decisions very quick. In a matter of hours, you have to act on the information that you have lawfully, that has been lawfully collected to interdict drug shipments or terrorist activities, and a warrant requiring you to go to the court to seek probable cause for information that has already been lawfully collected only prevents that from happening. I don't understand. I understand that it's well-meaning for people that are proposing it, but again, I would defer to the people who sit in these chairs and make these decisions who would tell you that it doesn't work.
Anybody else want to comment on the warrant requirement?
So, Congressman, I'd love to comment. Thanks for the question. I do just want to add a couple of points. Agree with everything Director Radcliffe said. You know, not only is this already collected data on foreign personnel outside of the United States, data that is being queried has also already been analyzed to ensure that it contains foreign intelligence value, which I think is a very important part of this. And then when we query a U.S. person term, we're not querying for U.S. person information. We're querying for foreign intelligence that has already been evaluated at least once to contain foreign intelligence in the database that's being accessed. And then the final piece that I think is important is that both the FISC and the Department of Justice have established robust legal and compliance rules that we adhere to and that is audited by DOJ for every query that we make.
Thank you. I yield back.
Dr. Barra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, we've known each other for a long time. We were both elected to Congress in 2012 and served together for a while. I may not have always agreed with your positions, but I respected the consistency of some of your positions. Director Gabbard, following the January 3rd, 2020 drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, you gave a speech on the House floor 6 days later, on January 9th, 2020. In this speech that is permanently in the congressional record and available for anyone to view, you stated, quote, President Trump has committed an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization from Congress. A war that would be so costly and devastating, it would make our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan look like a picnic. On February 28, 2026, the Trump administration, under which you are the president's principal intelligence advisor, launched an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization from Congress. This war has already been costly and devastating. 13 American service members have lost their lives, including Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marsden from my home of Sacramento, California. And approximately 200 service members have been wounded. The Pentagon reported that the first 6 days of Operation Epic Fury cost $11.3 billion. That averages almost $2 billion per day. That was the first 6 days, and now we're in the 19th day of this war. That's ballooned into a regional conflict, putting the lives of Americans and our allies throughout the Middle East in danger. Director Gabbard, do you still believe that strikes against Iran that don't have constitute an illegal and unconstitutional act of war?
Congressman, thank you for the question. The cost of war weighs very heavily me and my colleagues here, especially for those of us who have experienced and seen the cost of war firsthand. Okay. My own personal and political views, as I mentioned earlier, I was asked and required by Congress and by the President in this role as the Director of National Intelligence to check those views at the door to ensure that the intelligence assessments are not colored by my personal views.
Director
and that's
Gabbard,
exactly what I am responsible to deliver.
Do you still believe that war would be so costly and devastating that it would make our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan look like a picnic?
Once again, in this role, it is essential that I do not allow any of my personal views, any issues, to color or bias the intelligence reporting that we deliver to you and to the President.
Director Gabbard, in this hearing 1 year ago, I asked some questions, and I'll paraphrase my exact question. It's like, we should keep politics out of this, even if the President disagrees with a directive, if it goes against wishes, if he's considering an order that potentially is unconstitutional or illegal or compromises our security, I want your word that you will always provide and give the honest advice to the President, even if it will make him angry. I asked you that question. I'm going to read your answer. And to your specific question, the answer is yes. I will inform the President of that accurate, timely, unbiased intelligence reporting, whether it is something that agrees with an assumption or a view or an objective or not. That's my responsibility to him and to the American people. Director Gabbard, there is no imminent threat of nuclear breakout. Did you deliver that assessment?
I have delivered the intelligence community's assessments to the President.
There was no imminent nuclear threat to the United States. There was no evidence of imminence that Iran was going to attack American assets. That was different from anything they've done over 4 decades. That was going to attack our homeland. There was no imminent threat. Imminent is defined in the dictionary as something that is about to happen. Not something that's been happening for 4 decades, not something that is going to happen 3 months from now, not something that's going to happen a year from now. Imminent said this is about to happen. Did you deliver that assessment to the president?
I delivered the intelligence community's objective analysis of the threats, the severity of those threats, and the scope, along with assessments of the different scenarios and contexts that exist within the Middle East.
The president owes it to the American people to go on television, to explain to the American people, to the service members who have died in action serving our country, why we are at war with Iran. He needs to go on television and explain that directly to the American people, what the imminent threat was.
Gentleman's time has expired. I would advise the members that a vote has been called. It's a single vote. And if members want to back and forth so we can maintain the continuity of the hearing, we'll do that. So if you start to see it, just to our witnesses, you know how this works. They'll be moving in and out to go address that vote and then returning to their seat. But at this time, I recognize Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for the record, I would like to submit an article from Politico dated February 24th, 2026. And the union Dems demand Trump make Iran plans public. I think most Americans understand that if the President of the United States makes those plans public, then the enemies get to see them as well.
Without objection, so ordered.
And that was the date of the State of the Union. Director Patel, I'm going to come to you very quickly, and then I'm going to move on. But I listened closely to Senator Langford's testimony yesterday about fraud and the other things that are going on. And I want to bring your attention, this was in March 25th of 2024. An unsuspecting Uber driver named Lalitha Tulanda Hall drove to a house near Columbus, Ohio to pick up a package. She had no idea that the 81-year-old man who lived there had just received a series of phone calls from scammers who had threatened to kill him if he did not give the woman coming to his house $12,000 in cash. He killed the lady, so she's dead. He now has a life sentence. Are you aware of any action or investigation that the Justice Department has taken to pursue justice, to bring the scammers and put them and make them pay for what they did?
I think you're referring to, Congressman, scam centers and scam compounds that are wreaking havoc on our citizens.
I'm referring to this individual case. This lady was murdered, and a man now has life in prison.
I can't speak to that individual case. I can tell you what we're doing generally if you wish, but as you said.
No, sir, I want to bring that case to your attention. I think that we need to pursue that. Someone is dead and someone else has life in prison. And it was the scammers that did it. My heart goes out to both families, but the scammers are the ones that need to pay the price. They're the guilty party here. Director Gabbard, you made a lot of changes at ODNI, changes that I think were necessary that I want to give you the chance to talk about. So what concrete steps in ODNI 2.0, what are they taking to address politicization, weaponization of intelligence, and unauthorized leaks, and how will these reforms help rebuild public trust in the intelligence community and help the United States of America?
Thank you very much for the question, Congressman. I committed to all of you before taking this role that I would execute on that, to bring back ODNI's focus on its core mission, to cut the fat, to cut away any detractions away from that, and to ensure that our intelligence community was providing objective, timely, and relevant intelligence to the president and to policymakers. I conducted a ground-based review of the mission, the capabilities, and measuring effectiveness of ODNI, which resulted in a reduction of force by roughly 40%, and a narrowing of focus and reorganization that consolidated and coordinated the experts within the ODNI in order to be able to deliver those effects. Leaking continues to be a prolific problem across the IC. We have and continue to implement tools and capabilities within the Zero Trust framework to be able to get after those leakers and refer them to the Department of Justice for investigation and prosecution. We've seen we are continuing to focus on the issue of analytic tradecraft and the integrity of it, once again, to make sure that the analysis that's being conducted is not being colored by anyone's political or personal views on any issue. To that effect, we have and continue to conduct re-looks at different intelligence products that have been provided in the past. As the chairman mentioned, one related to anomalous health incidents, to identify politicization of these products in the past, and also make updates to intelligence community directives to ensure that these things don't happen again.
Could you speak briefly to China's presence in the Caribbean and the Western Hemisphere?
I'll be able to speak to this more in the classified setting, sir.
Okay. Director Ratcliffe, I'm going to have questions for you there as well. We have not heard much about Haiti lately in the news, but it's very close to the United States. My understanding is that 1 in 4 Haitians, about 2.5 million people, now live in an area controlled by an armed group. Can you speak to what is happening in Haiti?
Yes, sir. This was something that we talked about within the annual threat assessment. Haiti, along with Cuba, continue to be areas of volatility. Haiti, as you mentioned specifically, is being controlled by a gang, and we've seen increasing threats on U.S. persons within Haiti. These two countries continue to create challenges where, with increased instability, may be one of those drivers of increased migration flows to the U.S.
All right. Thank you all for your service.
Gentlemen's time's expired. Now recognize Mr. Gottheimer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I can start by talking about something I was disappointed in from the administration about comments made by members of the administration that Israel drew the United States into conflict with Iran, seeming to buy conspiracy theories that scapegoat Israel, while dismissing that Iran poses a persistent threat to America and our service members and diplomats in the region. While the president then clarified this is not the case and that America entered into a joint operations with our ally under our own accord, many still seem confused about what precipitated this conflict and the threat Iran posed to us directly. So if I could ask Director Ratcliffe just a couple questions, yes or no, if that's okay with you. Is the Iranian regime committed to America's destruction, in your opinion?
Yes.
Does the Iranian regime have American blood on their hands since its founding in 1979?
Yes.
Has Iran plotted assassination attempts against Americans on American soil?
Yes.
Was Iran developing a nuclear weapon prior to our military action last June? And did Iran remain committed to developing a nuclear weapon in the lead up to this conflict?
Yes, so I want to clarify on that because there's been much talk about a fatwa against the development of a nuclear weapon.
Can you come back to that 1 second? Let me finish
yeah,
these,
you
and that's
bet.
okay. If left unchecked, do you think Iran would have the ability to develop missiles capable of reaching the United States?
Yes.
Did Israel force the U.S.'s hand and make us take action, as some have claimed?
No.
Director Gabbard, do you agree with the CIA's director's assessment on that last question in
Yes.
particular? Great. Do you want to go back to that point you want to make?
Yeah, much has been made by some about a fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons. Notwithstanding the fatwa, what we know, and the intelligence community is in agreement on this, is that Iran possesses at least 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to weapons grade 60%, which doesn't have a civilian use. The only use for that would be the development of nuclear weapons.
Thank you, Director. Director Gabbard, I want to raise serious concerns about your recent hiring of Dan Caldwell, a strict critic of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, who's argued that U.S. forces in the Middle East are, quote, more of a burden than a benefit, has claimed that Iran's nuclear program does not pose a risk to America, despite the IC's assessment to the contrary. Dan has also said that our relationship with Israel has no benefit to American national security. This follows the resignation of Joe Kent this week, a senior ally of yours who is a conspiracy theorizing white supremacist with a tattoo Panzer referring to Nazi tanks. He has made known his backwards opinions of Israel in his resignation letter, scapegoating them for U.S. intervention in Iran and Iraq. Director, what role do you anticipate Mr. Caldwell playing in shaping intelligence assessments or internal discussions related to Iran and Israel? And can you guarantee to this committee that no individuals in your leadership are undermining the objectivity of intelligence at this critical moment?
Sir, my understanding is one of my elements sought to hire Dan Caldwell months ago for a purely administrative role that would not have any position over the intelligence analysis or assessments on any topic.
Thank you. Director, as you know, the Iranian regime has been responsible for the deaths that we've talked about of scores of Americans since coming to power in '79. Iran and its terror proxies must be crushed. I've been clear on that point in the last weeks and throughout my time in Congress. I supported the decisive action taken on February 28th to remove key regime leaders and degrade Iran's ballistic missile and naval capabilities. However, I think it's really important the administration make its goals clear to Congress and to the American people. Director, were you in a meeting to discuss a possible strike on Iran?
Congressman, there were several meetings that were held in advance. I'm sure I was in at least some of them.
On the potential impacts the conflict could have on global supply chains and on oil and gas prices prior to the outbreak of hostilities? Were you in a
yes.
meeting? Were you in any meetings where that came up?
Yes, that is the intelligence community's assessments, and those were provided.
Did the IC brief the president on who would succeed the supreme leader if he was killed and the likelihood that a replacement would be a hardliner?
Was the president, say it again, was the president?
Did the IC brief the president on who would succeed the supreme leader if he was killed and the likelihood that a replacement would be a hardliner?
The president's objectives with respect to Operation Epic Fury did not include regime change. That may be different from what Israel's objectives were, but yes, the president was briefed in the event that Supreme
Okay,
Leader.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to cut you off. What specific steps are you taking to detect, prevent, and disrupt terrorist plots targeting Americans at home?
Iran, as the world's largest state sponsor of terror, does pose a continuing threat to the homeland. And just last year, our Iran Threat Mission Center housed in the FBI, our fusion cell, saw a 43% increase in Iranian spy actors willing to steal our information.
Dr. Jackson.
Good morning. First off, I want to say thank you all for your time today, and thank you for our service to our country. Much appreciated. I thank the chairman for his opening remarks on anomalous health incidents, AHI. As many of you are aware, one of my primary responsibilities in this particular committee, I am the subcommittee is and has been a central oversight effort. And so I am going to ask a quick question about this. Director Ratcliffe, during the Biden administration, the CIA very poorly, in my opinion, handled this issue. Since then, a CIA doctor has provided perjured testimony under oath and obstructed our congressional investigation. A quick question for you. False statements to Congress in order to conceal CIA equities or activities related to the handling of AHI during the Biden administration?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I want to ask Mr. Patel, I got a question for you here. As a member of this committee, I also have a regional responsibility that includes Africa. I'm very concerned about the radical Islamic terror threat that exists there and is growing by the day. Whether it's al-Qaeda-affiliated groups such as JNMI, AQIM, Al-Shabaab, or ISIS-inspired groups such as ISIS West Africa, ISIS Sahel, ISIS Somalia, or Boko Haram. These are radical, dangerous groups that want to kill Americans. After 4 years of an open border during the Biden administration, where we know countless individuals with terror ties, many are actively engaged with the largest state sponsor of radical jihadi terror, can you confirm that the threat to the American people in this setting is much higher due to the Democrats' current defunding of the Department of Homeland Security?
As I highlighted earlier, Congressman, the FBI works hand in glove with the Department of Homeland Security and our 59 established Homeland Security task forces around the country. And those officers are now going 1 month without pay, but they're still showing up to work. But yes, funding would absolutely help us protect the homeland.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One more question. Anyone that feels inclined can answer this. But according to the terrorism-related deaths occurred in Africa's Sahel region, including the Lake Chad Basin. Does the intelligence community assess that Boko Haram, ISIS West Africa, and other terrorist groups operating in the Lake Chad Basin are a threat to the U.S. interest, whether it's here in the homeland or regional U.S. interest? Currently experiencing with the allied states of the Sahel, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso impact that. And tied to that, how does the rise of alternative security forces such as Russia's Wagner Group, or now Africa Corps, how has that impacted our counterterrorism efforts in the region?
Islamist terrorist groups, as you've pointed out, in Africa, West Africa, and around the world continues to be a serious concern and major focus of the intelligence community. The challenges within the region are very complex because they have to do with governance challenges in many of these countries. They have to do with economic challenges as well as external influences, both with funding and equipping of these terrorists. Long-standing counterterrorism efforts in these regions, as well as those of our allies in this fight, such as the French and other countries, far more difficult because of the very real threat within that region to U.S. persons. If we are not able, if the U.S., if the Department of War is not able to coordinate with and get the support of the governments of these countries in order to tackle this terrorist threat, then it's not a safe or operable environment for them to continue that fight.
Thank you. And the assumption I'm working off of, too, is that the Russian influence via Wagner or Africa Corps has made it very difficult for us to develop those relationships and get those agreements so that we can continue to, make sure that this is not being brought home to the homeland. Is that correct?
That is a factor of many.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I yield back.
Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you. My question is basically starting with some HR questions, and they're first for Director Patel. If you could help me a little bit understand, I come out of the military family as well, but I don't know very much about the FBI's HR process or the growing up of an FBI expert. Could you help me understand how long it takes for a senior counterintelligence expert, especially one maybe focused on a very narrow threat, to be developed? How many years, I guess, would be my question.
Thank you, Congresswoman. That varies. Sometimes right out of Quantico, new agent trainees are placed on the counterintelligence mission set, and some people come in from the fraud section, so the answer varies. It could take a couple months to a couple of years.
And the next question is, when a person comes up in your system in the military, it was always the needs of the Navy or the needs of the Air Force. It was never the needs of the airman or the soldier or the sailor in terms of prioritizing our readiness, in terms of making sure that we met the mission. Is the FBI similar?
It is similar, ma'am. It's a dynamic. We flux and surge based on the CICT cyber threats and other threats to the homeland, and violent crime mission has seen a surge as well.
So my specific question is that there was a report that came out in February from CNN that the FBI had let go or fired dozens of agents and staff members from a counterintelligence unit tasked with monitoring Iran. And apparently the reason, at least reported in the press, was that these individuals had been involved in the investigation of classified document handling from President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and that this was the reason why they were summarily let go. First of all, are you aware of those firings, and do you concur with the rationale or reason for those firings?
I'm aware of that, and I know there's a pendency of litigation, so I'm not able to comment on them.
Did you yourself order those firings?
The FBI, every time there is someone who violates our code of conduct or ethical standard, conducts an internal investigation with the careers there, and they present a decision point to me. The Iranian Threat Mission Center has seen an increase of 43% in arrests for Iranian spy actors. So the Iranian Threat Mission Center has never been stronger.
So I'm not asking about, I'm asking about whether those people were fired because they were involved in the investigation of the document handling by President Trump, not for any behavior issues. Is that your understanding as well?
Again, ma'am, I can't comment on them because those are in pending litigation.
I guess I'm a little stymied here, Director, because it feels as though literally when there was a possible pending war, I'm outside of this intelligence circle in many ways, even though I serve on the Intelligence Committee. You collectively must have been aware when these firings happened that there was a meaningful chance that the U.S. might be engaged with a war in Iran. And having these very expert, super qualified folks summarily dismissed at this time, it just feels like an odd choice in timing. Were you aware at the time that this was going down, that this may end up weakening the mission and the readiness of that group?
The mission, as I stated, has never been stronger when you see a 43% increase in counterintelligence arrests and 21% increase in cyber arrests against the Iranian Threat Mission Center. My focus is on providing the American people the strongest FBI as possible. I don't work on timelines. I work on evidence that's presented to me.
I guess my concern is that it feels as though, and I very much honor the tone and tenor of this hearing, that this is about making sure that that we depoliticize what is the most important thing that we all do, which is keep us safe. And it feels as though this issue is a political issue. And I just am worried that we are taking really good, and picking fights with one another across party lines, rather than making sure that we protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe. With the remainder of my time, Director Gabbard, I have a question regarding the fact that the Secretary of the Treasury loosened restrictions this week on Russian oil exports and now sell oil again. Did the IC assess that clearing the way for increased Russian oil sales would benefit Moscow, possibly?
I don't believe there's been a formal IC assessment on this topic yet, as it is underway.
So I would highly encourage that, because it feels as though by easing these sanctions, we are directly providing the Kremlin with revenue, the revenue that will be used directly to kill Ukrainian soldiers, and an increased likelihood that Putin will be successful in his war with Ukraine. I thank you for your time, and I yield.
Ms. Wagner.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for being with us today. As we sit here in Washington, our armed forces and our intelligence assets are engaged in conflict with the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, Iran. A radical, ruthless, and murderous regime that has killed and maimed thousands of United States troops and citizens over the past 50 years. CIA Director Ratcliffe, can you elaborate for the American people on the threat that Iran posed to our American personnel in the region prior to Operation Epic Fury? To the extent you can in open hearing.
Sure, Congresswoman, happy to address that. I think is well documented, and as you've encapsulated, Iran has been a constant threat for the last 47 years. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans killed, certainly thousands of Americans maimed as a result of activities of Iran and its IRGC over the years. But particularly, no cessation with respect to the threats to U.S. interests and forces in the region, not just from Iran, but from its proxies, from Iraqi militia groups like Kataib Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, all of these proxies, if you will, of the Iranian regime, funded by the Iranian regime, committing assaults and attacks on American interests persistently.
So they did pose
absolutely
an absolute threat.
A constant and immediate threat at all times.
Thank you. General Adams, as Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, can you inform the American people about the threat our armed forces have eliminated thus far?
Yes, ma'am. Representative Wagner, thanks for the question, and I will like to go in detail. I'm going to cover a little bit here. We will be able to cover more detail in the classified session. But the goals that the President has set out and that have been accomplished and executed by the Central Command were aligned along the DNI's discussion earlier. One, eliminate their ability to power project. And that was inclusive of ballistic missiles, but it also includes their UASs. And so we have been very effective. We can talk about specific numbers in the closed session.
Okay.
Their ability to reproduce both missiles and UASs we've been very effective. And you can tell from the news, in fact, the chairman talked about it this morning, we have sunk their Navy. And so those specific objectives have been very well accomplished, and we'll go into great detail in the closed.
General Hartman, as Acting Director of the National Security Agency, can you explain how weakening the Iranian regime is impacting the availability of resources to our adversaries like China? Mike, please.
Hey, thanks for the question. Obviously not able to go into any classified discussion here, but certainly weakening the regime and weakening the collaboration between Iran, China, Russia, other adversaries has a global effect of making the world safer.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for all your insights, and thank you for keeping our troops and our American people safe. As you know, I chair the first ever subcommittee on open source intelligence. Over the past year, our subcommittee has been working tirelessly to ensure the intelligence community is leveraging the vast amount of commercially available information to the highest degree of efficiency and cost effectiveness. Director Ratcliffe, as the CIA, is the functional manager of open source intelligence. Does the CIA know which data has been acquired across all agencies within the IC?
Thanks for the question, Congresswoman. As you know, the CIA's open source enterprise is driving the open source collection across the entire IC in support of the administration's top priorities. Two of those priorities I've already talked about: counter-narcotics and threats from adversaries, use of emerging technologies. Those collections, as a result of our open source, are up 70% and 40 or 45% collectively. The CIA does lead the IC in pioneering new uses of AI to extract insights from the vast amounts of open source data that are there that we then share with analysts, warfighters, everyone across the IC.
I thank you. My time has expired. I have a lot more questions dealing with open source that we will do in closed session. So I thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Before I recognize Mr. Gomez, I want to make sure that all members have had an opportunity to vote because they are prepared to close that vote on the floor. If you haven't, please go do so at this time. Looks like we're good. All right, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to get right into it. Director Gabbard, last year you testified that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. Do you stand by that statement? Yes or no?
Context matters with that statement.
Yes or no?
Iran had all of the
reclaim my
materials
time.
and
I reclaim my
capabilities
time.
to do so.
Mr. Chairman, I reclaim my time. It's an easy answer. You either stand by what you said last year or not.
It is a serious question that requires the totality
Director Gabbard,
of the
I
information
reclaim my
available.
time. I reclaim my time. When President Trump was asked about your testimony, he said you were wrong. Were you lying or not?
I stand by the intelligence community's complete assessment.
Director Rack, when it came to the director's testimony, she said that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon last spring in Congress, and so the Supreme Leader has not authorized the nuclear weapons program. Do you agree with what she said or not? Yes or no?
The director's right here. She can speak for herself.
Oh, so I thought this was an intelligence community briefing. Let's move on. Trump also said he didn't care what you thought or said. Should he care about what you have to say when it comes to intelligence?
I continue to provide the president with the intelligence community's assessments on all matters.
So let me just kind of get this straight. The department, you said that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon last year. President Trump said he didn't care what you thought, and you were wrong. They engaged in Operation Midnight Hammer. He then says it was obliterated. We hear later reports that in open source reporting that it was only set back by a few months. Then at the beginning of this war, he said that they were weeks away. I just want to kind of get a sense of, were they weeks away of achieving a nuclear weapon? Yes or no?
Congressman, this is a serious matter, and you've made some very serious mischaracterizations
yes
here.
Or no? Were they weeks
and so
away?
It would be
yes
a disservice to you and the American people to answer this question with a mere yes or no.
Reclaiming my time. Were they weeks away or not? The American people need to know if this was an imminent threat or not. If they're weeks away or not. If they're months away or not. None of this dodging Were they an imminent threat? Yesterday, you said that only the president, only the only person who can determine what is an imminent threat is the president of the United States. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes, I do.
Director Ratcliffe, do you agree with that assessment? That the president is the only person that can determine if something is an imminent threat or not?
The president as commander-in-chief gets to make a decision about what's an imminent threat. The intelligence community, well, the intelligence...
Reclaim my time.
The intelligence...
Reclaim my time.
Intelligence community has provided a body of intelligence
my time.
that supports
the reason why
the decision
is that if the president can
made.
determine and ignore what you're doing, why do you guys even have a job? Why do you even advise them? So you're saying tomorrow the president of the United States can say China is an imminent threat, and then he can take his own... No matter what the intelligence says, he can take his own action. So that's what you're basically saying. Okay, let's go on. Director Gabbard, you said that North Korea has intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach the homeland. Yet, the Defense Department said that Iran was at least 10 years away from achieving an intercontinental ballistic missile that can reach the homeland. Which one is a more serious threat, North Korea or Iran?
These threats are taken within the context of the total body of intelligence reporting.
So that's it should be, and that's my point. It's not just about having the capability of building a weapon. It's if they can actually deliver that weapon, if they can they have the intention of doing that. How many weeks away are they? We haven't heard that there were weeks away. We haven't heard that there were months away. But that's what we're waiting for. Imminent, to me, means is that they're mobilizing troops. They're moving things into position, artillery. They're getting ready to attack. But everything that we've heard is that this is not the case.
Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here and for the work you do. It's a marvel that just 1 year of strong leadership from the White House has shifted the conversation in this room from that of appeasement and passivity from the Biden administration to that of American strength brought about by the doctrine in Venezuela and Operation Epic Fury in Iran. And it's not lost on me that as we sit here, we have one side of the dais talking a big game on threats, and yet they're unwilling to even fund our Department of Homeland Security. I want to thank President Trump's leadership in each of your efforts. Because of your efforts, Americans are safer today with 2 less despots to deal with. Nevertheless, there remains work to be done. While Venezuela and Iran are in decline, aggression from adversarial nations like China and Russia and near constant threats of terrorism and cyber warfare continue to persist. The Chinese Communist Party in particular remains a top adversary that routinely deals in bad faith, and this was highlighted most recently by White House Office Director of National Drug Control Policy Sarah Carter when she delivered recent remarks in Vienna saying, quote, "We know that China's weak export controls and lax enforcement allow its chemical industry to foster friendships with the drug cartels. At the same time, China's overly effective controls over rare earth minerals wreak havoc on legitimate industries," end quote. Of course, we're now seeing reports of a new synthetic opioid called cyclorphene that is said to be 10 times more potent than fentanyl and undetectable on fentanyl test strips. As you know, President Trump may meet with President Xi in the near future, where trade and export controls will move. Director Gabbard, what is your assessment of the quality and quantity of AI compute that China can indigenously manufacture?
The majority of this question should be addressed in a closed hearing. Intelligence community's assessment is that China continues to rapidly advance its AI capability.
Do you assess that export controls on semiconductor manufacturing equipment and AI compute have been effective, slowing the development and deployment of Chinese AI?
The intelligence community's assessment is that one of the effects of those export controls is China has increased its focus on developing its own organic capability.
What do you assess would be the economic and national security impacts if the U.S. decided to loosen export controls and allow the sale of NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs or large numbers of H200s to China?
I don't believe there is an intelligence community assessment on that specific scenario.
I think that these national security implications should be weighed heavily when conducting these talks, considering that fentanyl overdoses are only down in the U.S. thanks to the President's leadership in securing our borders and taking the fight directly to the cartels in our hemisphere, and not the empty words and actions of the Chinese Communist Party. Our adversaries are constantly conducting cyber operations on U.S. government and private sector networks to steal information and money or conduct disruptive cyber attacks. We've just been tracking the Chinese Typhoon actors for several years. And just last week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Salt Typhoon actors, which were responsible for targeting U.S. telecom, may have accessed sensitive FBI networks. I may have more to follow up on in the closed session. For now, I want to discuss how the overall U.S. government posture is going to change based on President Trump's cyber strategy, which was released last week. Been frustrated for some time about the unwillingness of prior administrations to decisively take action, including the use of offensive cyber operations. Director Patel, beginning with you, what can we expect from the FBI moving forward to be more aggressive on both defensive and offensive cyber activity?
Thank you, Congressman. So as you stated, the President just launched a new national security cyber strategy, and within that is what the FBI just launched 60 days ago. It's the most comprehensive cyber program we've ever put out, called Winter Shield. And what we do, connecting Pillar 1 and Pillar 4 of the President's strategies, is go on offense and defense. And so what we've done already is, while we are always going after nation-state actors, we also have to engage with the private sector communities, because they are going after the private sector as well. We've held 355 engagements in the last 60 days with enterprises across America to harden their networks. And as you recall, just a couple of months ago, our banking infrastructure was hit by a ransomware attack from overseas. In one weekend, the FBI disrupted and kicked off every one of those bad actors from that network, saving the American people their valued billions in those bank vaults. So this is some of the things we're doing, but we need constant engagement with the private sector.
Great. General Hartman, what efforts are underway at NSA to bolster intelligence collection and threat detection and coordination with other federal agencies to target adversary cyber operations?
Congressman, thanks.
Briefly.
Significant effort to really focus our cybersecurity director, working very closely with Director Patel and our Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, which has thousands of analyst-to-analyst relationships with private organizations across the country. We need more work, not just from an offensive standpoint, but working across government and certainly working across private industry. And we're both dedicated and resourced to doing that, Congressman.
Thank you for what you do. Yield back.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Quigley.
Thank you. Lightning round, please. General, I understand tomorrow is your last day before retirement.
Yes, Congressman.
I can think of better ways to finish things for you, but we appreciate your being here. I want to really ask you and each of you, if you have full-time personnel dedicated to analyzing and collecting foreign threats on the 2026 elections, and if so, just yes or no, and how many personnel we have.
Congressman, I'll get you the exact number, but certainly we have people paying attention to those threats.
Thank you.
Congressman, yes, we have an election crimes coordinator in each one of our 56 field offices and election crimes coordinators at headquarters.
Thank you.
Yes, we have personnel dedicated both to election security as well as foreign intelligence related to election influence.
Thank you.
Yes, we do as well. I don't know the numbers, but what we do collect, then we contribute to the larger IC coordination.
Thank you.
Representative Quigley, we do not, to my knowledge, have anyone at DIA on that topic.
A question again for all of you. Well, first, Director Gabbard, you've seen the reports about what has helped Iran in targeting in the current war in Iran. Can you confirm that, or is that something we're going to save for a closed session?
We'll save that for the closed session, sir.
But within that context, on CNBC, Steve Witkoff said on a recent call with President Trump, Russian leaders deny they were sharing this target information, shock, surprise, all that they would do that about U.S. military assets with the Iranians. Mr. Witkoff said, so you know, quote, we can take them at their word. Let's hope they're not doing this. Just from your own sense, and for many of you who have been fighting in the Cold War for a long time, a long lost sense of a Reagan doctrine. Just general, it is your sense that you can take Putin at his word on anything involving military, diplomatic, or intel assessments?
Hey, Congressman, from an intelligence standpoint, we don't take anyone at their word. From a foreign standpoint, we execute intelligence operations to provide that information to decision makers.
I appreciate that. Mr. Patel, Director.
I agree with the General.
Yes, I agree. We don't take anyone at their word. And from an intelligence standpoint, we don't rely on single sources of intelligence and always look for multiple sources to confirm.
Director.
Yeah, Congressman, I actually answered this question yesterday. I don't take Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, Supreme Leader, any foreign adversary leader at their word. Rely on our intelligence to reflect what those adversaries are actually doing.
General.
We absolutely do not take any of those enemies at their word.
Can I get a hallelujah? Ms. Gabbard, I understand that you have to put your own personal views aside in your position, but I honestly think that the issue our grandchildren are going to be most upset about us with is climate change. So, you know your quote, and when you talked about climate change as a member, it threatens the safety and security of the planet, especially in places like Hawaii, where we are already experiencing its devastating effects. But respectfully, it's not in worldwide threats. Used to be in worldwide threats. So help me understand, who makes the final decision on what goes in here and what is a threat?
Congressman, it's a collection of the intelligence community's assessments that the National Intelligence Council and our experts there work on. This year, we've structured the annual threat assessment around the President's national security strategy to address the most tangible and direct threats to our security and our interests.
I get that part. Did you make the case that maybe climate change should be considered a worldwide threat when we are this collective process? Did you make the case with what you said not that long ago?
Yeah, once again, we focused on the most tangible and direct threats, given the complexity of those threats that exist here and on the homeland and around the world.
So that's stating that that climate change isn't in any way a tangible threat now or in the future. It's basically saying we think so little of it as a threat, we don't even mention it.
I think the changing of the climate, the weather, the environment is a factor that goes into the different intelligence community assessments on effects.
Gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Tinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to our briefers and for your service to our country in multiple cases for some of you. And everyone who serves in the intelligence community to give the support to everyone that's serving. I fully support President Trump's efforts through your agencies over the last 18 months. Many have recited this, but for the past 47 of terrorism. The Islamic Republic of Iran has operated with impunity. They've destabilized the Middle East, brutalized their own citizens. Their hands, and now they're paying the price for that despotism. And I want to thank our service members and President Trump in making these difficult and stunning decisions. But it is also stunning what the